So that was a very punny joke, but I've got another one. This is the season everybody's spending more time in shopping centers than you normally do. But you know, if you've seen one shopping center, you've seen them all. That's good, a lot of good groans. That's a good one, that's a good one. Thank you, it's great to be here. What a fun occasion, this is wonderful. All right. I'm going the wrong way.
Flip it 180. See what I did there? 180.
Yeah, I saw that. Good one. I'll throw another pun at you if you like. All right, so I'm going to talk tonight about tuberculosis drug development as a case study of how a public-private partnership can be successful. And my colleague in the audience, Tony Hickey, has also worked in TB drug development, so you can talk with him at over the beer afterwards as well. So normally when I give my partnership talk, I show this slide first, by way of warning, but you're getting the condensed version, so this shouldn't be a problem unless you've had more than one beer tonight. So why public-private partnerships? What are they and why do we need them? Well, they're collaborations between industry and academia, governments and nonprofits to develop new medical products. And we need them because industry is reducing their investment, especially in early stage R&D for certain therapeutic areas. And a very good example of that is antibiotics. There are a number of companies that have gotten out of the antibiotic development area. But there are also synergies that are realized from the expertise and the resources, the facilities across the different sectors that might be involved in industry or universities and government. And there's the potential for data sharing across different clinical trials as well. So there is a need, and you'll see in the case of tuberculosis that there's a serious need for a partnership. These are some examples of public-private partnerships. There are hundreds, but I won't put you to sleep by going through all of those. But these are some examples addressing different therapeutic areas. So we'll start in on TB, and you'll understand what that is and how a partnership's been helpful. Tuberculosis is coming up. Almost had it. Okay. It is really the oldest of human diseases that we know of. It's often called the White Plague, consumption in a number of old novels, or the graveyard cough. Evidence of TB was found in human remains as long as 5,000 years ago, 5,000 BC. It's also in the writings of Homer, Aristotle, early Chinese writings. It was a leading cause of death in the mid-17th century in London. And a number of luminaries that have contributed to our society and our culture died of TB, including my favorite North Carolina author, Thomas Wolfe. So a number of you are probably out there saying, well, that's great, Doris, but that's a history lesson. We're here to learn about drug development. And that's old, that's history. We don't have TB anymore. That's what I hear from a lot of people. Unfortunately, that's not the case. It is currently a serious global epidemic. 1/3 of the world is infected with tuberculosis. It's the leading cause of death from infectious disease. It's surpassed HIV now. 2 billion people in the world carry TB, and someone's infected every second. And 1.5 to 1.8 million people die every year of tuberculosis. There's no continent untouched. Treatment is 4 drugs over a 6 to 9 month period for drug-sensitive TB. But the last new drug that was developed for treatment of tuberculosis is incorporated in a regimen 50 years ago. So if that doesn't get your attention, let's move on to extremely drug-resistant TB. This is a TB that is resistant to all of those 4 standard drugs that I mentioned. So there is no real cure. People try a lot of different things. It's been confirmed in more than 100 countries. You treat people for 2 years. They have to be isolated because TB is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, an infectious disease, and it's spread by coughing or sneezing, so it's very easily spread. So you have to isolate these patients because they have a very serious form of it. And after 2 years of treatment, only 16% cure rate. So XDR is emerging as an extremely deadly and costly global health threat. So you can see that it's an ideal candidate for collaboration among the different sectors on a global basis to try to find a better cure for TB, certainly one more recent than 50 years. And for that reason, in 2000, the Global Alliance for TB Drug Development is a nonprofit, public-private partnership formed in 2000 that involved governments, industry, donor entities, and they came together to form an entity that would address these three areas of their mission: to develop new and better TB drugs, obviously, but they went beyond that. And they also said, well, we can develop the best drug in the world, but if it can't be accessed because it's too expensive, or people don't incorporate it into their country policy, it won't have the impact that we would hope that it would. So they also are including ensuring affordability, access, and adoption as one of their objectives. And the third objective is not just to develop their own, but to coordinate and catalyze TB drug development by others around the world. TB Alliance participants, a number of them are shown here. The major contributors have been Bill and Melinda Gates, have been wonderful in supporting it, but also the National Institutes of Health, Rockefeller Foundation, and others. I'm from RTI International, and we were very fortunate to be part of the formation of the TB Alliance in 2000 and its ongoing operation in drug development. All right. So early on, we looked for compounds that could be incorporated into the TB Alliance for development, and we found a library of compounds with a small biotech in Seattle called Pathogenesis. And we found this particular promising compound as one of theirs, and the TB Alliance licensed it in order to develop it. And when that licensing took place, a San Francisco columnist had this to say about it. This deal tells me that biotech leaders, international health officials, and philanthropic groups are trying to create mechanisms to address needs that would otherwise fall between the cracks. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for both the TB drug and the larger experiment in nonprofit drug development. This was in the early 2000s. I want this guy to cross his fingers for any endeavor I undertake because I'm happy to say that I'm keeping you in suspense, aren't I? Come on, you can do it. All right. This drug that was licensed in the early 2000s is now in phase 3, the final phase of clinical trials before being approved by regulatory agencies for marketing. And it has demonstrated exciting potential as a safe and effective drug treatment for both drug-sensitive and drug-resistant TB. And I'll explain what the drug-resistant TB is. So this was taken forward by that public-private partnership, and it is in phase 3 and looks to be very successful. So drug-resistant TB. I mentioned it a little bit earlier when we talked about what the scope of the problem is. It is a disease in which it kills most anyone who comes in contact with it. It's a 2-year therapy. I think I mentioned earlier it's a 16% success rate. Even after 2 years of therapy, injections once a day for a month, for 6 months, pills for up to 24 months, that's 17,000 pills, and IV infusions twice a day. Toxic, expensive, very difficult to give in low-income countries. And so to address this, the TB Alliance, in collaboration with others, have initiated this NICS TB trial. It's a clinical trial testing regimen with PA824, the compound we just discussed, bedaquiline and linezolid. So it's showing promise that rather than this very complex, toxic, expensive 2-year therapy, it's very promising for a 6 to 9 month therapy with only 3 to 4 pills taken every day. No injections, no infusions. So if a global collaboration and partnership can do this, it's very exciting. And I have a story to tell you about this trial, and I heard this story when I went to a meeting in Cape Town not too long ago, and the woman who was directing this NICS clinical trial told the story about a young woman who had been in this 2-year therapy for 10 months, had been isolated in the hospital from her family. She turned 21 during that 10-month period, and nothing was working, and they knew that they had to do something different. And this therapy, the P824 bedaquiline therapy, they said we're going to have to start her on that. It's experimental, but there's no choice. So they did, and about 3 weeks later, she was still in the hospital. A worker went by her room and heard very loud sobbing coming out of that room, and they thought, well, she's having a psychic break. Maybe it's an effect of the drug. So they sent in a mental health professional to help her through it. As it turns out, she was sobbing because she felt so much better. She knew she was going to get well and she could get out to see her family. The week before that conference at Cape Town, she went home. So, yeah. So with successes like that, I am encouraged that in the not too distant future, we're going to hear a chorus of people around the world singing, oh, I got to keep you in suspense, singing this song. Come along. Ding dong, TB is dead. Thank you. Appreciate it.